When Donald Trump went into the Oval Office, the rulebook went out. Mr. Trump came to Washington basically promising to shake things up, and he's certainly done that, says Professor Peter Trubowitz, director of the United States Center at the London School of Economics. Washington hasn't been jolted this way for a very long time, so I suppose you could say Trump managed to achieve what he set out to do on that score. The president's actions, words and tweets have sent shockwaves around the world during his first 12 months in office. Approval for the U.S.'s role in the world fell to a historic low in a Gallup poll released this week, with the country on a par with China in the eyes of citizens across the globe. Ripping up the rulebook, Donald Trump in the Oval Office EPA domestically, he has historically low approval ratings, but support among his core voters has held relatively firm. 1 year on from his inauguration itself, the cause of a row over photos of sparse crowds for the event. The Evening Standard looks at what the major milestones have been during a tumultuous first year in office. Protesters in London demonstrate against Donald Trump's travel ban. Getty. Within days of taking office, Mr. Trump sparked global condemnation by signing an executive order halting all refugee admissions and temporarily banning people from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the U.S. The move, which targeted people from Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia and Yemen, triggered protests and months of legal wrangling as courts sought to stop it from taking effect. World leaders including German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Canadian Prime Minister criticized the ban, while far-right leaders in Europe and former UKIP leader Nigel Farage welcomed it. Michael Flynn's resignation. February 14. Resignation. White House National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Reuters. Michael Flynn, who was the president's national security advisor, resigned his post over alleged contacts with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. before Mr. Trump took office. Mr. Flynn later pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about the contacts and struck a deal to cooperate with investigators probing alleged interference by Russia into the U.S. election. FBI confirms launch of Russia investigation. March 20. FBI Director James Comey confirmed for the first time that an investigation into alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election was underway. The Trump administration has consistently insisted there is no evidence of collusion between the president's election campaign and Russia. But Mr. Comey insisted, "We will follow the facts wherever they lead." Supreme Court appointment. April 7. Donald Trump alongside his Supreme Court appointee Neil Gorsuch. Carolyn Castor. At the fight for places on the bench of the U.S. Supreme Court is often a bitter one. For Mr. Trump to manage to appoint his choice of Neil Gorsuch, a conservative who will tip the balance of the 9-strong bench rightwards, was a victory which is likely to have implications lasting long beyond the current presidency. The court has the final say on topics ranging from gun control to abortion and election campaign spending rules. Trump fires James Comey as FBI Director. May 10. Ousted FBI Director James Comey is sworn in during a hearing before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence (AFP) within 2 months of Mr. Comey confirming a probe into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia during the 2016 election. The president fired him from his post as director of the FBI. Trump said the decision was a result of Mr. Comey's handling of an inquiry into emails allegedly stored on a private server by Democrat candidate Hillary Clinton during her time as Secretary of State in the Obama administration. Trump's one-time chief strategist Steve Bannon later described the sacking as the biggest mistake in modern political history. Special counsel appointed to oversee Russia investigation. May 18. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller was appointed by the Justice Department as special counsel to oversee a federal investigation into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia during the 2016 election. The president continued to insist there was no collusion. Donald Trump's presidency and numbers. The position of special counsel brings with it wide discretionary powers to decide on what charges should be brought against key players, but final responsibility for the handling of the Russia investigation still lies with the Deputy Attorney General. Withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. June 1. Citing concerns over its impact on the U.S. economy, Mr. Trump announced in June that the U.S. would withdraw from the 2015 Paris Agreement on climate change mitigation. "I was elected to represent the residents of Pittsburgh, not Paris," Mr. Trump said at the time. The agreement, between 188 countries including the U.S., was aimed at reducing the rate at which temperatures rise. The president's decision attracted widespread criticism from world leaders and members of the business community. German tabloid Berliner Kurier expressed the views of many with its blunt headline "Earth to Trump FU." Obamacare repeal bill blocked by Senate July 28. Maverick Republican John McCain voted against the bill. Getty Images. Mr. Trump was dealt a crushing blow in one of his key legislative measures as his efforts to repeal Obamacare, Barack Obama's flagship healthcare bill, were defeated. In a moment of high drama in the U.S. Upper House, Senator John McCain joined two of his Republican colleagues to block the replacement bill's passage. His inability to make good on his campaign promise to repeal Obamacare was Mr. Trump's most significant legislative defeat in his first year in office. Fire and fury. August 8. Tensions heightened between North Korea and the U.S. Strap Getty Images. Amid escalating tensions with North Korea and its despotic leader Kim Jong-un, Mr. Trump warned the country it would be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen, if it endangered the U.S. The chilling language came amid an increasingly bitter war of words between the two countries and repeated weapons tests by North Korea. Weeks later, Kim Jong-un labeled Mr. Trump a mentally deranged U.S. dotard. Charlottesville protests. August 13. Car attack victim Heather Heyer's mother Susan Breaux receives a standing ovation during her remarks at a memorial service for her daughter at the Paramount Theater in Charlottesville, Virginia. University of Virginia students, faculty and residents attend a candlelight march across grounds in Charlottesville. Mark Heyer, the father of Heather Heyer, speaks during a memorial service for his daughter at the Paramount Theater in Charlottesville. Flowers, candles and chalk-written messages surround a photograph of Heather Heyer on the spot where she was killed and 19 others injured when a car slammed into a crowd of people protesting against a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville. Marcus Martin, Wright, hugs his fiancée Marissa Blair during a memorial for Heather Heyer at the Paramount Theater in Charlottesville. University of Virginia's President Teresa Sullivan Wright walks with students, faculty and Charlottesville residents during a candlelight vigil on the campus. University of Virginia students, faculty and residents attend a candlelight march across grounds in Charlottesville. Artist Sam Welty creates a chalk mural of Heather Heyer during her memorial service. Clergy observe a moment of silence during the memorial service for Heather Heyer outside the Paramount Theater in Charlottesville, Virginia. Supporters gather on the pedestrian mall outside the Paramount Theater during a memorial service for Heather Heyer in Charlottesville, Virginia. People participate in a candlelight vigil at the University of Virginia. A photo of Heather Heyer, who was killed during a white nationalist rally, sits on the ground at a memorial the day her life was celebrated at the Paramount Theater in Charlottesville. A white supremacist rally in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia, ended in tragedy when a 32-year-old anti-fascist protester, Heather Heyer, was killed by a car driven by a man with alleged Nazi sympathies. In the days that followed Ms. Heyer's death, Mr. Trump faced criticism after he stopped short of explicitly condemning the far right. Not all those people were neo-Nazis, not all those people were white supremacists, he said. You had people that were very fine people on both sides. The leader of the Democrats in the U.S. Congress, Nancy Pelosi, said, the president's talk of violence on many sides ignores the shameful reality of white supremacism in our country today. Steve Bannon is fired. August 19. Dismissed Steve Bannon. Bloomberg via Getty Images. In August, Steve Bannon became the latest top aide of the president to be dismissed as he was sacked from his post as White House chief strategist. A former chairman of right-wing website Breitbart, Mr. Bannon was seen as a key influencer of Mr. Trump's nationalist rhetoric during the election campaign and his time in the Oval Office. Mr. Bannon's dismissal was one of a number of high-profile departures from the Trump administration during an often chaotic first year. It raises questions about competence, said the LSE's Professor Trubowitz. The problem with the hiring and the firing and all the drama is, it raises questions about who's in charge and what's going on. Jerusalem decision. December 6. Fallout. Protesters set fire to a poster of U.S. President Donald Trump after the decision. EPA. In a move which overturned decades of U.S. foreign policy, Mr. Trump announced that the country now recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The president said the U.S. is beginning preparations to move its embassy from Tel Aviv, where other countries have their embassy. Israeli sovereignty over Jerusalem has never been recognized internationally, and Palestinians consider East Jerusalem as the capital of a future state. Israel welcomed the historic announcement, while Palestinian leaders described it as deplorable. The move sparked warnings of a setback in the Middle East peace process. U.S. tax reform. December 22. Mr. Trump scored his first big legislative victory when he signed the biggest overhaul of the U.S. tax system in a generation into law. Donald Trump's election pledges success a failure. The package included a slash in corporation tax from 35% to 21%, as well as a cut to the top rate of personal tax. But experts suggested Mr. Trump's influence over the bill's passage was limited. All of Donald Trump's losers during his presidency. Dr. Jacob Parakilas, the deputy head of the U.S. and America's program at think tank Chatham House, said that was a bill that any Republican president would have signed. Trump's interventions, by all accounts, were not especially effective. Dow Jones hits record high January 4, 2018, boosted by U.S. economy figures and a global markets boom. The Dow Jones stock market index hit a record high, passing the 25,000 mark for the first time. Markets in the U.S. had been boosted by the Republicans' tax reforms and job growth figures. It means the Dow has surged by more than 31% since Mr. Trump's inauguration. But what about the wall? Perhaps the most famous of all Mr. Trump's campaign pledges was that of building a wall along the U.S. border with Mexico. So far, all there is to show of the promised wall is a series of prototype barriers. Last week, his chief of staff said Mr. Trump's views on the border had very definitely changed, and in a tweet, the president said parts of the wall would be see-through and it was never intended to be built in areas where there is natural protection, such as mountains, wastelands or tough rivers or water.